So this video is from the town hall last week that the strategy subcouncil and Aaron participated in. The town hall was about the fuel mechanics and how that would work. And also got into how we think would be the best option for balancing. I explained why I think mine is the best and the problems that I have with Annie's, which is integrating land, and Aaron's, which is content updates. I'm only going to touch on the balancing part of my model. If Aaron's model goes through or remains how it is, then this would eventually come through as an ICCP built on top of that. But this is the biggest core difference is the balancing part of it. And I'm going to touch on quickly what the balancing is. So basically the goal would be to reduce the volatility of the prices, of the price of each individual fuel. So as the demand goes up, the supply will follow. And I basically have that set to a monthly basis. So if the demand goes up, let's say 10% month over month, then that next month, you'll divide that in half. So you'll take that 5% and you'll add that onto the supply. So every month you have a change in supply to try to not match the demand, but to keep it closer, to reduce that volatility. So a quick example would be like, say in June, there's $100,000 of in-game revenue. And then in July, you're producing 100 units of fuel, 100 units of Krypton. And then for that next month, July, there's $110,000 in revenue. So you're up 10%. So now you're going to take 5% of that and adjust the fuel production. So now in, say, Aaron's model where you're making 100 Krypton and it might be worth $1.10, now you're making 105 Krypton and it might be worth $1.05. So as the landowner, you're still getting the same amount of value. You're just going to be getting it maybe a little bit more of that Krypton or that fuel to keep the volatility of the price down a little bit or up. I mean, what I like about my system, and I'll touch on this in a second, is that whether demand goes up or down, mine scales a little better for that. Another thing that we can recognize, like we all recognize here, that balancing is necessary to some point to have some sort of control. I'm sure even, Aaron already touched on this, but like if a travel started at $1 and it went up to $10 in a month, like that would be a problem because it's going up so quickly. So my model would be to reduce that volatility. Now to touch on the three things here. So Rails, and then I want to touch on content updates, and then a little bit into land integration, which Annie's going to touch on. So for Rails, I agree with Aaron that they should be avoided, and I don't really like them at all. I understand that they could be put in place, but I think they should be put at a really high percentage. And let's just say, for example, that high percentage is a 200% increase, over a month period or something like that. If you were just comparing my model to Aaron's model, it's going to take a significantly more amount of demand for my model to hit that 200% rail than it is for Aaron's too. So no matter what we decide that rail is going to be, my model almost works as an alternative to Rails so that it's less likely that we hit those, that upper rail or that lower rail. So for content updates, this is where I think I disagree with Aaron on. Just because I've been involved in other games, for example, Axie Infinity, as the demand was, skyrocketing up and then plummeting down, the team was constantly coming out and changing, how much it costs to breed or how much earnings you'll get from each match. And every time that pissed off the community. If you're in the community and you see the demand going up, you're constantly, waiting to see when the team makes an adjustment. And no one really liked that, because then you'd wake up one morning to an announcement that there's some kind of change. Like, for example, in Illuvium, you might wake up one day and you see in an announcement that there's a new structure that you can put on your land to produce more fuel. Well, once that announcement comes out, you know that the fuel you have all of a sudden has less value because everybody's going to be creating more of it. With my model, it's predictable in the sense where if you see demand is climbing up this month, you know that next month all of the supply is also going to follow that and go up. And I don't think anyone likes the change in supply, but when it's predictable, at least you can you can front run it. You know what's going to happen. If you want to sell a little earlier because you know that change is going to happen, you can do that, rather than, like I said, seeing an announcement in Discord and then all of a sudden deciding in your head, okay, there's more fuel going in, so maybe I should sell mine now. And then it doesn't make you a forced seller, but it creates a system where you have to rely on what the team is doing to base your decisions off of, when in a predictable model like this, you know what's coming. And just to touch on what Annie's going to talk about is, integrating land into it. So slowly introducing more land to slow down the inflation of price. I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do think that it shouldn't be implemented right away. Because yes, it'll keep the overworld prices down, like the price of each fuel down. But if we start doing that real soon, that hurts the landowners that we currently have. I think that could be implemented down the road, and I think it's the best way to introduce new land, but I don't think that should be used right away. Let's see here. Another problem I have with Annie's model is that it would be introducing land based on new paying wallets rather than revenue itself. Because there's definitely a scenario where if there's a big promotion with GameStop or something, we might get thousands of new wallets that go and pay for one round of travel just to try it out. And all of these new wallets can trigger a new land sale, but we could still be in a down month where there's less revenue. So now you're adding new land to the system and you have less revenue, and it's just going to drop the price even more. Another big difference I have, and I think I disagree with Aaron on this one too, is that my model scales better to the downside. And the way I like to think about it is that if you're holding 1,000 units of Krypton and then the whole market just crashes, then you know that next month there's going to be less overall demand or less overall supply coming into the market. So it's going to hold up what you're currently holding a little better. I like to kind of think of it as like the impact the Bitcoin halving has on the market. Imagine if when Bitcoin just plummeted down, there was an automatic halving. We know how that influences the price to shoot it back up. So it'd be kind of similar in the sense where when the Krypton fuel price, plummets down, you know that there's going to be less produced in that next month to pull what you are currently holding, back up a little bit. Yeah, I guess that's really all I have here. This will come up as a ICCP, assuming that Aaron's model or the current model stays in place, and then I'll present this again to the community. But really, the point of having it here is just to give some context to the argument between Vet's model and Aaron's model. I'd also say if you're in here and you like Vet's model, when it comes to what I have, this is the next best thing to that, because it's going to keep that volatility down. So where prices might shoot up 500%, let's say, in Aaron's model, that means in my model, it might only go up 100%. So we're keeping that fuel price, more stable so that the end user doesn't see as big fluctuations. But yeah, that's what I got. And if you want to see this full town hall, I'll try to leave a link down below.